everyone, it's Allison. Welcome back to my YouTube channel and welcome to a really fun video. It's a little bit longer than usual, not too long, but as you can see, I made 4 cards with the new Dancin Christmas Collection from Spellbinders. This is one of the August releases, and this is always one of my favorite releases of the year because I just love these Dancin dies. So we are going to start with this cute moose card. This is the Dancin Moose Klondike set, and this is a screenshot from the Spellbinders website that shows exactly how all of these dies fit together. And I love how you can make him with or without the sweater. He's adorable both ways, but I chose to make the sweater. For my cards today, I am making a bunch of backgrounds that are all white, but I want each of them to still have some texture and interest. So this is the Plaster 3D embossing folder. This is new from Simon Hurley. Maybe it came out last month, but I think it's a really cool embossing folder. And here is just some white paper. And when I use 3D embossing folders, I like to spray my paper first. And here is what it looks like when you take it out of the folder. The reason I chose this embossing folder is because I thought it was reminiscent of snowdrifts. I think this, again, I love this embossing folder. I think it's really versatile. So I am going to add a little bit of light blue ink to highlight some of the snowdrifts. I have my smallest waffle flower grip mat to hold my ink cube, and I'm using one of my small shader brushes from Waffle Flower to add the ink. And there's no rhyme or reason here. I'm just adding the ink along the top of some of these ridges created by the embossing folder. Just really easy. And I love how this little grip mat holds my ink cube in place. All right, so here is what it looks like. It's just very subtle hint of light blue. All right, jumping ahead a bit, you can see I've already assembled the main parts of the moose. Again, that image on the website is very helpful in showing how to put the pieces together. Now this is the All Seasons Winter Press plate and die, this sentiment. I hot foiled that plate onto light blue cardstock with my white opaque foil. And by the way, this overall card measures 4 inches by 7 1/4 inches, so it will fit nicely into a slimline envelope. And there's that sentiment. We're going to make this guy dance. So the first thing to do is secure the top of the legs with a foam dot. I have identified a fairly flat area in this embossed background to put that foam dot, so I kind of just lucked out with the spacing there. I'm going to use some pretty thick foam dots that I just recently uncovered in my stash. I have no idea where I got them. I'm guessing probably from Michael's. You do want your foam dot to be pretty dimensional because the rest of the moose needs to be elevated enough to not interfere with the leg's motion. I'm adding glue on my foam dot, which I don't normally do, but I don't know how old or reliable the adhesive is on these foam dots, so that's why I did that. And then I just put the legs back over that foam dot, again adding some glue just as an added precaution, and then I can adhere that adorable little sweater right on top of that foam dot. And again, I was just using the head as spacing just to make sure I have enough room for the head. Now, speaking of the head, I have added some more foam dots to the back of the head so that it's popped up with the same dimension as the rest of the body. And when I add the head, I'm going to kind of tilt it to the left, which I think just makes it a little bit cuter. And here's my first test to see how the legs swing. And they swing a lot. Now, I had made these little snowflakes using the die from the set. This is the same one that I had put on the sweater. And I added a little blue ink around the edges to help them stand out a bit from the white background. Now, when I made these snowflakes, I was just going to add them in the background, just a few, but then I got an idea. This guy has super long legs, and I worry that he's going to pull a muscle with all of that swinging. He might hurt himself. So I decided to use a couple of the snowflakes as stoppers, just to contain some of his excitement. So, I don't know. I think it's super cute having the full swing, but I thought these stoppers were a good idea. So I've glued the snowflake in position, and I'm now adding a third layer just to make sure that it's high enough to act as a stopper. So there we go. I'm pretty happy with how that is working. So I'll add another one on the left side. So just figuring out where I want to put that. By the way, for my cards today, I cut all of my die cuts from white cardstock, and then I colored them with my Distress inks and a blending brush. I don't usually do that, but I was making all 4 of these cards at once, so it's just easier to do that. And here we go. There's a test of how those stoppers work, and I'm really happy with how it worked out. For a finishing touch, I'm adding a little blue pearl to the center of the snowflakes. These pearls are from Spellbinders. And here we go with the finished card, and I think he is so adorable. I love that little sweater. All right, speaking of adorable, here is the next card. He's so funny. This is Dancin Douglas. And again, I am showing the screenshot from the website that shows you how all the pieces go together. Now, like I had mentioned, I cut all my pieces today from white cardstock. And here's a little bit of the ink blending that I did. For this tree, I wanted to have a bit of an ombre look. So I'm going to ink light to dark, starting at the top. I'm using my Waffle Flower mini stencil mat, as I do with almost all of my ink blending. I know it was recently renamed, and I warned you at one point that I would probably call it the wrong name. I think it's now called the Media Mat. The ink colors that I'm using for the tree are Salvaged Patina, Peacock Feathers, and Uncharted Mariner. And every time I finish a piece, I will put them together to make sure there's a nice transition between the colors. Now, I didn't use the Uncharted Mariner until I got to this largest piece. So here comes that color. And I did ink it first with the Peacock Feathers just to get a layer of that color on there. Now I am going to come in with some Evergreen Bough just to add a little bit of green into that blend because it was looking a little too blue compared to the other pieces. And here we go with the finished blend. And I'm really happy with how that turned out. Now for this background, I'm using a faux embossing technique using a word die. This is when you glue die cuts to your background in the same color and it looks like you used an embossing folder. This winter die is from the 4 Seasons die set, which also has a die for the other 3 seasons. Also, they come with shadow dies. To make sure all of these dies are evenly centered, I started by gluing the word at the top of my card panel and at the bottom of the card panel, and then I'm just eyeballing the center to get this center word. My T-square ruler comes in really handy to make sure that everything's level. And now again, I can eyeball the center between the 3rd and 5th word to know where to lay this one. And finally, using my T-square to line up that last word. Now here is the die and the matching shadow, and I just wanted to point out that I didn't glue my words exactly as it's laid out in the die. Since the W is separate, you have some options as to how you want to arrange the word. So there it all is finished, and here's my tree. And I just wanted to show you that I originally had inked up some brown legs and arms because I was thinking they would be like the trunk and branches, so I made them brown, but then I thought it looked too much like a person dressed up as a tree. But let's face it, this really is a person dressed up as a tree. In fact, this absolutely is my friend Kelly if she was told she could wear a costume to work. All right, here is a letterpress set that I showed in my last video. I had hot foiled all of them with black foil, and now I'm using the matching die to cut all the sentiments at once. Now, because this is foil, you just want to be careful when you're adding tape to the die because the tape will remove the foil. Here's the sentiment that I picked out, and by the way, this guy is not going to dance, unlike my friend Kelly, who actually would be doing nothing but dance in this costume. And how funny is he? You'll see that I added some colored ornaments as well as a silver glitter star. And there's some silver ornaments as well. And here we go. Third card. He is so cute. This is the Dancin Gnome Alfie. And again, here's all the little dies that are in the set. Let's talk about the background for this card. I used the new Frozen Flurries die from Simon Hurley. As you can see, it cuts out a bunch of snowflakes from the background. I chose to leave the snowflakes intact and just pop out the tiny little dots and diamonds that are scattered around. And now you can see the turquoise card base that I have behind those holes. This gnome is going to dance, but this is an A2 size panel, so he would be a little too tall with those long legs. I wish I had that problem, but I was not blessed with long legs, that's for sure. So what I'm going to do is cut the legs down. I'm starting by cutting the feet off, and I will reuse those feet. And now I'm cutting a little bit more off the legs, and I'm just making sure that I cut off enough for him to fit on this panel. So here's just a little bit of quick ink blending to color these funny little shoes. They're kind of like little court jester shoes. All right, so now I can just reattach the shoes to the shorter legs. And you'll never know that it wasn't supposed to be like this. I'm using the same foam dots that I used for the moose card. And just like the moose, I added some of the foam dots to the back of the gnome head. Now, before I attach the head, I'm going to glue the arms on since they do attach to the back of the gnome. And by the way, I had already glued the present to the beard. I had cut that from some patterned paper. So here is how I attach the arms. And then I used my reverse tweezers to hold each of them in place while the glue dried. So those tweezers always come in handy. So now I can remove all the release paper and attach him to the foam dots. Now here's the sentiment that I picked for this card, again from one of those Better Press sets. I really wanted to put it over the legs, so again I had the idea of creating a bit of a stopper for the swinging legs. I figured that was kind of enough swing. So here I have just put a small piece of those foam dots at each end of this sentiment. I did stack the sentiment 2 or 3 times on some heavyweight white cardstock just to give it some strength since it is only supported on the sides with, those 2 little pieces of foam tape. And here we go. He does still dance. Maybe not as much as he would like, but I think it looks pretty cute like that. And here we go. Here's the finished card. And I love that background. All right, 4th and final card. This is the Dancin Nutcracker Fritz. And similar to the moose, there are 2 different ways to assemble him. You can use the long arms and have him holding a long stick, or you can use the short arms and have him playing the drum like I did. So I love that there are options. This is the all wrapped up 3D embossing folder, and I'm going to show you one of the techniques you can use with this folder, and that is inking up the folder before sending it through the die cutting machine. Now again, I'm going to spray my panel with water because this is a 3D folder, and I'm using Distress Oxide and just swiping it on the embossed side of this folder, so those little ribbon details are raised. I'm just going to add my paper in there and send it through my machine. Now here's the embossed side, the raised side, and then you'll see the ink on the debossed side. And I think it's really cool looking. But I'm not going to use that side. I am going to use the white side because I am sticking with all white backgrounds today. I'm just adding glue to all of those flat white areas on the back of the embossed panel and attaching that to just a black mat. And then I can attach that to a pink A2 sized card base. Now here is my ever so cute Nutcracker. And I made the drum as well, which is also so cute. And here's a sentiment. Now remember, the matching die cuts all of these out at once. I then fussy cut the two words apart so that I could stack them on my card. Now before I attach the Nutcracker, I'm gluing these adorable little mallets to the back of his hands. And I'm just positioning them where I want them, and then I can add a tiny bit of glue. I am attaching the mallets so they're at different heights, just to give the idea of motion. So it will look like one of the mallets is hitting the drum and he's raising the other mallet. And now I'm just attaching the drum to the bottom of the Nutcracker. Again, this is an A2 size card, so I cut off his legs completely for this design. And I'm adding some scraps to the back just to make it all level. I will be attaching him with foam, and I like attaching foam to a level surface when I can. And I had the scraps anyway, so here I am adding the foam, and then I can attach him to the card base. And it's easier, you know, attaching him with foam to the embossed panel. Now I'm going to attach the first word to the bottom of the drum. So I'm just using my glue. And then for the second word, I'm using these foam strips from Simon Says Stamp. These are pretty dimensional, and they'll pop that word up high enough to be level with everything else. So here you can see all the tiny little pieces that I put on the back there. And then I can just attach it to the card base. Now here I'm going to add some finishing touches. I have pink jewels for the crown, some gold pearls for his jacket, and then flat gold circles for the top of the drum. Now I cut these from gold cardstock using the small eyeball die from the Moose set. That was the die I just showed you. Now I left this part in because it was kind of funny. One of the gold pearls fell into the little crevice between his arm and chest. Does anyone remember that old game called Operation? That's what I felt like I was playing here. I had to pull out the tweezers. There was no buzzing. Maybe they still make that game, I'm not sure. But that was a fun game. Now I added a few more of those gold pearls around the card panel, and he is all done. And isn't he handsome? I kind of slightly regret not making him full size because I love these colors, but I'll make another at some point. Now I do want to point out that I did cut these pieces from colored cardstock, whereas for the other cards, I remember I cut everything from white cardstock and ink blended the colors. But this, you can tell by the sharp colors that it was colored cardstock. And here is a reminder of all of the other cards that I made for today. I think they're all adorable. Again, I just love these Dancin dies from Spellbinders. They're always my favorite, and I think they're cute regardless of whether they swing or not, whether they're dancing or not. They're just so fun to play with. I really appreciate you joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. I will see you next time, and until then, take care. Bye-bye.